Okay, we can start. We already have some number of participants, so welcome everyone to this first episode of the Atlantic and Arctic Lighthouse Weekly Hour. My name is André Valente and I'm here representing Blue Mission. I'm from Air Center. So in today's episode, we will have our esteemed colleagues from PREP4BLUE. We are very happy. This is a very important and relevant project. And they will provide an overview of the project and their goals and some ongoing activities. So as representatives of PREP4BLUE, we have Erin Papazoglou from Euromarine Network and David White from Marai. So hello. I think we can start. David, if you want to share the...
I can share 1 second. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I give the floor to you both. Maybe you can give a short presentation of yourselves, and then we can start.
Great. Thank you so much, Andre, and thank you for the invitation, for having us here in the first episode. We are very happy, and we are looking forward to the next ones. I will start and set the scene of the project before I hand on to David. So we are here to present PREP4BLUE. My name is Irini Papazoglou. I work for Euromarine Network, which is a network of research institutes specialized in marine science, and I'm representing PREP4BLUE management team, so as the project manager. David White, you can introduce yourself.
Yes. Yeah, I might as well just go quickly now. Hi, everyone. Yeah, my name is David White, and I work for the Marai Centre of Energy, Climate and Marine with University College Cork in Ireland. And I'm leading a work package in PREP4BLUE on citizen engagement and developing methods and tools around that. So we can tell you a bit more about that later.
Great. So for PREP4BLUE, we thought that it would be great to start with the main objective. The main objective of the project is really to facilitate the successful first phase of the mission Ocean. So that means from 22 to 25. And we do so by developing the co-creation and the co-implementation research and innovation modalities that they are required to achieve the objectives of the mission, and also prepare the ground for engaging citizens and stakeholders on the 4 different mission demonstrators, or as we call them, the Lighthouse sites. For the audience and the people that they're not very familiar with the mission, or that they are outside of the EU, it would be nice. We will just have a small recap of the objectives. So the mission Ocean is expected to deliver on key EU policies and initiatives, regulatory initiatives, in order to accomplish these 3 interlinked objectives as specific targets by 2030. EU is looking at restoring the ocean, but also the waters, inlet waters, and more specifically in protecting and restoring marine and freshwater ecosystems and biodiversity, prevent and eliminate the pollution from the ocean and inland waters, but also make the blue economy carbon neutral and circular. So the 3 different objectives are expected to deliver by 2030. We will be discussing a bit more about that later on in the presentation. What is very important to say is that the mission gives a change in the paradigm of research. So we have a challenge-driven research coming from as a priority from the European Commission, and we have specific and very ambitious targets to reach by 2030. Our project kicked off on June 22 and will run up to May 25. We are 17 partners from 7 different European countries with a total budget of 5 million. Our coordination is IFREMER at the moment, and as you can see, the different partners are most of them research institutions and universities, but we do have clusters and networks and also some SMEs as part of the consortium. PREP4BLUE is not standing alone, so we are explaining in this slide the landscape with the different projects. The first at least funded projects by the Commission. PREP4BLUE is a CSA. Is the first one is the overarching CSA that is coordinating very closely with the different basins CSAs, so the Blue Mission Atlantic and Arctic, the Blue Mission Banus, the Blue Mission Mediterranean Med, and then the EcoDali for the Danube. We do have quite some synergies already established in different thematics. We often meet and then we discuss. We are trying to have different and common working groups in some of the areas that our tasks are touching upon each other, let's say. And we coordinating closely with the mission implementation platform. The mission implementation platform has been set from the European Commission to assure the implementation and the successful implementation of the mission throughout its existence up to 2030, while PREP4BLUE will just prepare the first phase and hand on the rest of the workload to the mission implementation platform. Of course, in each CSA, in each Lighthouse CSAs, there are innovation actions and research innovation actions related to them. And two or some of them, they are let's say trans Lighthouse projects, such as the stakeholders and citizen engagement in different basin levels. So yeah, that's a little bit of the landscape, or the introductory landscape of the mission projects. And then I'm now handing on to David, so he can walk you through our specific objectives and questions that we are trying to answer within our projects.
Great, thanks very much, Irene. Yeah, I might say I might talk for a couple of minutes here, and I'll break halfway through just in case there's any questions, and then maybe again at the end if that suits Andre and Jose. But so yeah, I mean, in essence, PREP4BLUE is the first audience for PREP4BLUE is essentially other Mission Ocean projects. Like PREP4BLUE was the first one funded, and we're developing methods and tools to help all other projects following. So between the years 2022 to 2030. To engage citizens and engage stakeholders to make a mission a success in those regards. So the way we've structured the presentation today is around different problems that the mission has to solve in order to successfully include stakeholders and citizens of all kinds within mission activities, and some solutions that PREP4BLUE is offering that will hopefully make other research and innovation projects and research and innovation institutions' lives a little bit easier. And I might just say at the outset that really, when it comes to Mission Ocean, we and other Mission Ocean projects, but also other freshwater and ocean projects, that we're here to help. We're here to help projects orient themselves and their work towards the mission and help them achieve the mission objectives. So we welcome any and all questions. Please get in touch with us if we can ever be a help in terms of linking with other projects or synergistic initiatives out there, in terms of finding knowledge, and certainly in terms of offering training, networking opportunities, capacity building opportunities. These are all planned. These have all already happened, and we'll be doing more and more over the next 2 years. So yeah, it's an open invite, really. So problem one that we're engaging with is how to make European society aware of and supportive of the mission. So in this regard, we have some solutions that we're developing. The first is around communications. So we're developing a Mission Ocean Digital Academy. And this is, in essence, a digital training institute. You know, over the course of the mission, and the way the mission is structured is that there's going to end up being dozens and dozens of projects working on Mission Ocean activities. That's not to leave out like all the, you know, grassroots groups, like everything that's already happening around ocean and waters, citizen science groups, fantastic initiatives that now the European Commission, and we would like to make aware of the mission and just make sure that everybody is communicating the mission in kind of a structured way, and that we're not all kind of, you know, mixing messaging or anything like that. So that's what the Digital Academy is all about. It's got templates on mission communications. It's got ideas for communications campaigns, and our colleagues are collecting the representatives from different Mission Ocean projects that work in communications, just to better integrate all of that together. So again, there's lots of resources being developed there, and I'll pass on the slides afterwards. We've got email addresses throughout of the best people to contact in this, so they'll be available. And you can also check out our website, PREP4BLUE.eu, after the presentation as well. So the Mission Ocean Digital Academy is the first solution in terms of communicating the mission. The next one is a mission website and youth campaign. So PREP4BLUE is developing a public-facing Mission Ocean website called MissionOceanWaters.eu. It's nearing completion at the moment. It will be live. It's already online, but it's not complete yet. It will be fully live very soon. And the purpose of this is really to be the online public-facing website for the mission, where people can go to get information about the mission, what the mission is, where they can get involved with different initiatives, and generally what's going on around them and how the mission is progressing. The youth campaign also, PREP4BLUE is looking for mobile journalists at mission events. And these might be young people who already live in areas, be it coastal areas or by inland seas or along the River Danube, for instance, that can bring stories of activities, positive activities that work towards the mission objectives to life around there. And I think the reason, this is important is this kind of helps bring the mission down to earth. The EU missions are, fantastic, ambitious, very large initiatives that kind of like floating up there. It's kind of, I think one of our kind of first and foremost in our jobs needs to be to kind of bring the mission down to earth and kind of, allow communities that are already kind of interacting with these areas and working with mission on mission activities and initiatives to kind of, to own the mission themselves, because it doesn't belong to research projects. So this is one way of showing the work that's being done by communities and not necessarily by projects in the mission. So again, we will be looking for mobile journalists as the project goes on in that regard. So the second problem, and I might pause after this one for questions, that PREP4BLUE is helping other projects to solve, is how to help mission ocean actors to engage citizens with the mission. And we're developing a lot of tools and methods around this that will hopefully be of help to everyone over the next couple of years. So the first one is resources for engaging citizens with the mission. We've recently published our first version of a toolbox of approaches for engaging citizens with Mission Ocean and Waters. This is certainly a living document. It will be added to and updated with case studies as the project goes on. But the aim to get it live early was so that it could be of best use early on, while the currently existing projects are kind of planning their citizen engagement initiatives. So I suppose the best thing to say about this is that, in terms of engaging citizens and stakeholder engagement and all that, there's lots of best practice documents out there already. The idea behind this is more taking all that good knowledge and thinking about how can this all be integrated with the specifics of the mission. So, how do you do stakeholder engagement at Lighthouse level? What does it mean to work with citizens on ecosystem restoration, like a coastal ecosystem restoration, or on managing, on co-managing marine protected area co-design and development initiatives. So yeah, it's making sure that there's mission specific advice available to projects that are working on the mission like that. The next thing that we are about to publish is a database of all, I say in inverted commas, all marine and freshwater citizen science initiatives around Europe. The all is in inverted commas because it's likely that we've missed some or that others are always developing. Over the course of the project, we'll be adding to this all the time. But the aim here is, our team have found over 1,000 citizen science initiatives from over 30 countries. And this will be made available publicly online towards the mid-autumn of this year. So citizen science and working with citizen science initiatives is one of the key the key target outcomes that the mission has selected in terms of citizen engagement. It's all over the mission implementation plan, and it's all over calls for the Horizon Europe calls for mission funding. So we're hoping that this will be of good use to everyone looking for initiatives that they might work with, things that are happening in their area, or just generally for networking and seeing what's out there. So it's very interesting what this process has found as well. There's some very obvious gaps, for instance, identified in marine and freshwater citizen science. Just off the top of my head, I think, for instance, there's a relative lack of fisheries-based citizen science initiatives compared to other types. And so that's an obvious thing to target in a project. Another one is some kind of like strangely absent partnerships. So citizen science groups partnered with aquariums are very rare among the 1,000 that were identified across Europe. Again, that's another kind of obvious partnership that could be made during a project. So this will be made available, and again, this will be available on our website towards the end of the autumn. So hopefully, it would be very helpful database and in terms of just helping citizen science groups themselves network with other similar projects from around Europe and get ideas. Next solution in terms of engaging with citizens and stakeholders is we're providing lots of training over the project aimed towards, specifically aimed at audiences in other research and innovation projects, Mission Ocean projects, but also policymakers, advocacy groups, grassroots initiatives, citizen science initiatives, ocean literacy groups. So we've already ran our first season of training this spring. We ran 5 sessions that were attended by over 700 people. Which is a fantastic start. As well as just offering training, we really see this as an opportunity, not just to kind of run a workshop, but to gather people working on Mission Ocean activities under the one roof or under the one digital roof if it's online. And so I think this is very important for creating a kind of a citizen engagement community of practice around the mission. Our input, in April and May, we ran impact planning for citizen engagement for Mission Ocean for the currently funded Mission Ocean projects. And it was the first time, so I think it was 22 funded projects at the time. We had 19 in attendance. And it was the first time that the CSAs and the innovation actions had all been in the one room together, talking together and meeting each other. And so that's fantastic, and the kind of energy that's created by that. I really do see that as kind of a really necessary part of offering training. It's that, and you build on that as the projects go on, and we keep that community fresh and keep that community alive. So that's what's happened so far. Each autumn and spring up to the end of 2024, we'll be running more citizen engagement specific training. And I think the main point about this is that it's flexible and it will be co-designed. I mean, we'll do evaluations after every one, but really we'd like to hear from you as in what help do you need to best engage citizens? Because we'll be designing these, currently designing an autumn series, and then we'll be designing a spring 2024 after that. And we want it to be as useful to you as possible and as useful to other projects as possible. So please get in touch if you have an issue. For instance, citizen assemblies and stakeholder assemblies, running them, structuring them so that they're useful to the mission, but can operate, for instance, over a whole basin. That's coming up as a specific challenge. So we'll probably run training on that in the near future. Anything else like that, please let us know, and we'll see what we can do, and we'll see can we match it to what we need to run in our own project as well. So I might just pause there for a minute. Is there, because there's already quite a lot. Is there any questions at this stage? If not, I can keep going.
I don't see questions in the question and answers. Everyone, if you have a question, please.
I think Jose has his hands up, does he?
Write it. Yes, Jose has a question. Let's go. Please, Jose. We don't hear you, Jose. No, not yet. By the way, he's in the airplane, if I'm not mistaken.
Hello, can you hear me? A very quick question.
David,
thank you so much for the presentation. I mean, projects like Blue Mission, we will like set. Can you hear me now?
Just about, yeah.
Can you hear me now?
There.
I think you might want to maybe pose the. He just put a question on the chat. David, was about the Mission Digital Academy, if that's open to all citizens and stakeholders. So I'll just briefly say that this is meant for projects that they are already engaged with the Mission Ocean. It's not an open resource to the broader public, but it's more intended to help everybody that is already engaged. So stakeholders that they're already engaged with the mission, and we are looking into the projects, and it might be also available to anybody that has signed the mission charter. Yeah, I don't know if you would like to complement this answer, David.
Yeah, I suppose just on that. So yes, so that's definitely the case. Once the Mission Ocean Waters website is launched, there will be a lot of kind of information and resources on that as well for the general public. So hopefully that will be of help there. Since Irene just mentioned the Mission Ocean Charter, I might just mention that for a second as well. I suppose joint work of all of our Mission Ocean projects is to try and get as many initiatives that are working on ocean or freshwater related activities signed up to the Mission Ocean Charter as possible. That is essentially an online pledging system where you can showcase the work that you are doing in those areas. Just, I suppose, briefly to say, I think for me, the two main reasons for doing that is number one is visibility of support for the mission. You know, as with everything in the world, there's a battle for funding, and there's different things, different funding priorities. This is the UN Decade of Ocean Science and the EU and the Decade of EU Missions. I don't think there's been so much political support for restoring our oceans and waters and transforming our relationships with them, maybe ever. So if there ever is a time to kind of like grasp that and make it as successful as possible, I think this is it. And the charter is one way of showing how much activity and support there is for mission-related activities around the continent. I think another really good reason, and this will become more and more relevant over the next couple of years, is that the mission, you know, when you sign the charter, it essentially ends up on an interactive map of all the initiatives that are going on around Europe. Over time, it will become possible to kind of compile these into, you know, mission lighthouse communities so that are all active on similar things, maybe around a sea basin, or that are working on specific things around the same region. And as more and more Mission Ocean projects launch, and that they're looking for groups to synergize with, to team up with on projects, to work with on the ground, the charter is a really good place to go to see, like, you know, the options for doing that, for teaming up. And so people, you know, projects will start using them at proposal stage to come up with options and to see who they might be working with. So it's a great opportunity for networking, for showcasing the work that you're doing, and in generally just supporting the mission like that. So if there's any more questions on that later, I'll try and answer them as well. Okay, so I'll continue on right now and maybe can answer more questions at the end.
Maybe you can just answer these two quick questions, and then you can move from Siggy Gruber. She thanks you for the presentation, and she asks you if you can give some examples also on how and in which countries you engage with the European Solidarity Corps, if at all.
Okay, so PREP4BLUE itself, our role is to develop methods and tools for other Mission Ocean projects to help them do their work. So on the ground specifically, we are not engaging with the Solidarity Corps on the ground. However, we did run a training on how about a month and a half ago about how the European Solidarity Corps could be engaged by projects, by Mission Ocean projects. So I can forward a link to the recording of that after this. It was actually very helpful. So basically what we had was we had a representative from the coordination of the European Solidarity Corps who described the funding mechanism and the application mechanism for groups and institutions who want to sign up to receive a group of volunteers to work on a project. And then we also heard from a volunteer themselves in Spain who's working on a very, I'll have to get the name of the project, but anyway, I can pass this on afterwards, and Jose can email it out. But basically what they did was they got funding to work within a Catalan community on different marine conservation related activities. And they used it as a community building device. So, you know, they weren't just one institution who got funding and kind of did whatever they wanted themselves. They got funding for a group of local volunteers. And then they went to the local municipal hall, the local library, the local research institution, and local community groups and said, what projects are you working on that you could do with help with, you know, volunteer man hours on around marine conservation? And so they got a list and they worked on the volunteers helped those groups work together to solve their problems. So not only did that local community get, you know, basically, you know, free volunteer hours to work on marine conservation, it ended up being a community building device and making links between these institutions that weren't already working together on these specific projects, but that all shared a specific interest. So I thought that was a really interesting group. Globers was the name of the the institution that she was from, but I can't quite remember. Oh, Marcius Blanca was the name of the project. I'll pass on links to all this afterwards. So I think that's a very good example. And yeah, like, so we can, hopefully that will be of help to you. But basically, yeah, the European Solidarity Corps can be used by Mission Ocean projects as a way of getting volunteers to work on citizen engagement activities and to drive them in specific areas. But you have to apply for funding for it, and that's explained in our webinar.
Well, that's perfect. I think Irene already put some link here about
Great, thanks,
the recording of the webinar. Okay,
Brilliant.
Maybe let's finish the presentation and then I will go through all questions. I think it's better.
Yes, no problem.
Yeah.
So the third problem that PREP4BLUE is trying to help other projects solve is how to orient stakeholder groups towards mission goals. So how do you know a vast array of different stakeholders in policymaking and industry and citizen engagement and research and innovation and everything else that are already working, you know, and they've already got their agendas and goals and everything like that, and how to make sure that they orient their work and how to help them orient their work so that they do it in a way that it works towards Mission Ocean goals. So in this, we have some solutions. The first is that PREP4BLUE is developing an interactive tool for engaging with stakeholders with the mission. So this is also going to be launched in autumn this year. It's an online interactive tool in terms of, again, there's other examples of these that exist. So it's to help you pick what kind of stakeholder engagement methodologies to use. The difference in this one is that it's structured in accordance with the mission. So again, there's, you know, like Lighthouse basins are integrated into it and searchable like that. The objectives of the mission refine the kind of results that you get. And it's fully interactive. It leads back to past examples of such, you know, the use of such methods from past marine and freshwater related projects. So it's kind of integrated with Cordis in that way. So yeah, it's just supposed to be very mission focused and help when you're planning stakeholder engagement activities and mapping stakeholder groups, deciding how best to engage them depending on the thing that you're working on, depending on the mission objective that you're targeting, and depending on where you're working and the kind of groups you're working with. So yeah, that will be released early or a bit later this year in mid-autumn. So again, you can watch our website for information on that. The next one is that PREP4BLUE, the next solution is that PREP4BLUE will be delivering recommendations on regulatory and economic changes that need to be made at kind of European level or national level to help achieve the mission objectives. And so this could, you know, at the moment, our colleagues in PREP4BLUE are mapping existing policies and regulations to make sure that, you know, that none are acting as barriers, or the ones that should be acting as incentives are being Europeanized, things like that. So like, for instance, one example is we were interviewing recently on for this task, and one person with knowledge of this area told us that, for instance, there is a lot of directives already in existence, like the port reception directive that kind of limits the amount, or that kind of regulates how litter is collected at ports. That already work very well, but the problem is that they're not being applied or they're not even known about all over the EU. So she had examples of fishers in around island states in some countries in the EU that are still being charged for the marine litter that they land when they come back from port, which is actually, you know, against the Port Reception Directive. And so some things like this that, you know, there's already some good regulations, but they're not actually being used, or they're not even known about at a local level properly. So we'll be providing recommendations on all these and how they should be, how the kind of very good ones should be upscaled and Europeanized, and how the ones that are acting as barriers should be changed. So a report will be available on that later in the year. And the last one I'll mention, and then we'll talk a bit more about the mission itself, is mission database and knowledge transfer tools. So our colleagues at Éireann Innovation, an Irish innovation company, have developed a knowledge transfer process where, you know, they say that deliverables from EU projects are often not enough to make sure that the results from the projects are used. They're often not delivered. You know, the way funding works is that our funding runs out and people who work on projects move on to the next thing out. People move on to different jobs, and this is just, you know, the way things work. So often really useful or really exploitable results don't get exploited or don't get delivered, say, for instance, from research and innovation to the industry partners, or commercialized in the way that they could. So our colleagues are also developing this knowledge transfer. They're looking at the kind of history of Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe projects and others, LIFE, et cetera, to see what kind of solutions and results have come out of projects, mapping them against Mission Ocean objectives. And we'll be publishing a public database, a kind of a searchable public database on this in the future in the project too. So again, you know, when teams are designing project proposals, or when you're working in the early stages of project planning, this will be a really useful tool to look at what kind of innovative solutions are out there, and how could you work with different groups, kind of, you know, drop these into networks and make sure that they're upscaled or replicated in the way that they should be. So again, that will be coming in the near future in PREP4BLUE. So I think that's for, you know, as far as this presentation goes in terms of the problems and the solutions that PREP4BLUE itself is providing. That's kind of all I had done. I thought that we might spend a few minutes at the end of the presentation talking about Mission Ocean itself, because, you know, Irene kind of alluded to it at the start of our presentation. The EU missions are kind of a very new way and a kind of a radical departure in the way the European Commission and governance in general does its business. It's essentially they're a movement from kind of a sector-oriented way of looking at policy and development to a challenge-oriented one. So quickly, for those who aren't aware at the moment, there are 5 EU missions, soon to be a 6th, and they're Mission Cancer, Mission Soil, Mission Smart Cities, Mission Climate, and Mission Ocean. And the idea is that these were picked because they're 5 grand challenges, and if they are solved, or if the objectives in each mission are hit by 2030, it would be a radical change, a radically positive change for European society. My own background is as an anthropologist, so I tend to obsess, and I'm like overly interested in things like structure and the politics behind things that aren't on the surface kind of political, like, say, for instance, Mission Ocean sounds at the kind of surface level like an ecological project, but absolutely not. I don't think it's, you know, it's very much also a socio-political project, and it's that kind of radical transformation that really interests me. And I suppose thinking about how, if that's affected, it can be a positive. You know, how can we help the positive aspects of that come out by working with Mission Ocean and to help achieve the objectives? So, I mean, in terms of it being a socio-political project, you know, I find this very interesting. I hear often when mission managers and the European Commission talk about Mission Ocean, is they kind of couch it in a past mythology of peace building, like as a community building within the EU. So, and the change that we've gone through. So, you know, I've often heard said our first mission together, or we first made peace through coal. Then it was through the creation of a single market, a shared market where, you know, all citizens can go at once. And now we have to make peace with nature. That's kind of the third mission. And so it's kind of linked to like a long history of community building. It's that's what the missions are trying to do, essentially, to build a more positive European community together. And I think in terms of Mission Ocean success, there's very good reasons for doing that, and for, you know, for kind of reaching out to citizens and stakeholders to help build the mission together. I know one example of an initiative in Scotland to set up marine protected areas a few years ago, and so they were doing this along with the local community, who were kind of brought through the whole process from start to finish. So first of all, the community themselves were allowed to set the objectives. You know, obviously one of the objectives of a marine protected area is that it conserves the life that's in it. But the local community were also allowed set objectives. So they chose things like promote the local community, the beauty of the local community, and advance, you know, the touristic capacity of the local community. And then when it came to management time for within that, so the management of the local community, or the management of the marine protected area, parts of that was delegated to the local community, who were funded by central government. You know, but they were given some funding by central government to do this. So, you know, I think it was a risk on the part of central government to fund the management of marine protected area in this way. But it means that like that community is built, and the marine protected area is really owned, like that, you know, that Mission Ocean initiative is owned by the community. So it's that kind of building community around Mission Ocean activities is very important. And I think that will really help with achieving the mission success. I think the next thing that stands out to me about the mission is it's a really interesting and good opportunity to rethink the relationships between project and funder. You know, working on these kind of like holistic and longer term, and, you know, I mean, what I mean by longer term is kind of over the 8 years of the mission, or the 9 years of the mission from 2021 to 2030, is that there's going to be many projects, and, you know, and then initiatives that aren't funded by Mission Ocean but are doing great work every day in you know, engaging with water and engaging with the oceans. But so that to get that sense of continuity and kind of working towards a goal that's kind of in the medium term, I think that is a good opportunity to rethink the relationship. You know, often research projects are funded in terms of there's a proposal stage, and then funding's allotted, and then you report twice, and then the project wraps up, and that's it. You know, I think to make something like the EU missions a success, that relationship could evolve, you know, to kind of a more back and forth. What's going well? How can, you know, not waiting for project deliverables, say at the end of a project, before an idea is given to a funder about what, you know, how the mission might have to change, or how, you know, that kind of light-footedness and that kind of ongoing dialogue between as projects go on and as the mission goes on, I think will be very important to make sure that it's a success like that. The third thing is, I think this is a really good opportunity, and the missions will serve as I suppose, as an example of how that challenge-based as opposed to sector-based thought can be kind of, you know, like brought back into governance at member state level and at EU level. So again, there's, you know, the different director generals in the commission tend to work on different things. And if we think about our own member states, you know, the way government is organized, there's ministries for finance, there's ministries for marine, there's ministries for whatever else, for housing, and all of these things. And, you know, you constantly hear it as a constant complaint, I think, in every country about the way that that one of the kind of like the things that makes government slow is that these things can become silos and that they don't talk to each other enough. You know, imagine what it would be like is if government at member states levels were organized around challenges. So a ministry for restoring the oceans in this case. I think that would be very exciting and a completely different way of doing governance. So I think the missions offer a really good test case for that. And I think anyone working on projects like ours, this should be one of our, you know, this should be one of our roles, is informing on how that was done well, or how it was challenging, and how it could be improved, and used again as kind of a template for governance, of doing governance well and of engaging governance with citizens. Second last one, and I'm almost done now, is yes, I mentioned it earlier. I think it's on all of us to bring the missions down to earth and bring Mission Ocean down to earth and connect it with activity on the ground, because that's exactly it. There's already, like, you know, it didn't take Mission Ocean to start for there to be a huge amount of really good activity going on all over Europe on the ground. And often it's still the case, you know, I mean, the missions are relatively young, but at the same time, the on-the-ground knowledge of Mission Ocean and its objectives and what it wants to do isn't very widespread, you know. And I think that's one of our key roles over the next couple of years, is to make sure that people realize that what they're doing is working towards this very kind of ambitious goal that is there, and there is funding for, and there's, you know, opportunities to network and to collaborate over the coming period, and hopefully achieve something fantastic together. And finally, I think in doing that, we need to make sure, so if you're mapping, you know, Mission Ocean initiatives over the next couple of years and everything that we're interacting with, that doesn't end up being a map of the European coastline. I think at this stage, we need to kind of make a very kind of strong effort to integrate river, lake, and inland sea communities into the mission. I mean, I noticed this a bit myself, and even in our kind of shorthand as Mission Ocean, you know, it's Mission Ocean and rivers and seas and waters and lakes, really. And even, you know, I think just the communities of practitioners around, say, for instance, you know, marine researchers tend to work mainly in marine and not always also connected to groups that work in inland seas. And I think that's something that we need to work very hard, very closely on over the next couple of years. When we're working on new projects, or when we're thinking of groups to work with, we make sure that we're picking coastal and riverine and lake communities. Yeah, and in general, I think all these things will help make us work towards Mission Ocean's goals, and to help make it as much of a success as we possibly can. So that's it. I'm happy to take any questions. I realized that there was quite a lot there. So like I say, happy to pass on the slides afterwards, and please get in touch with us. If you have any questions, like I said at the start, we're here to help, and we're here to support other projects that are working on Mission Ocean and setting up Mission Ocean initiatives. So please get in touch with us. We want to be connected with you. We want to help you solve your problems, and looking forward to working with you over the next couple of years. So thank you.
Thank you, David. It was a great presentation, very objective, very useful tools, I think. Let's go for the questions. We have here one from Natalie Fox, and I think it's still related to that database of projects and initiatives you were compiling. So in terms of projects, are you looking for projects that are community-led as part of a research institution, or NGO, or partnerships of all?
Okay. Hi, Natalie. I know Natalie. So in terms of, let me just think. In terms of citizen science projects, we are absolutely looking for kind of all shapes and sizes. If they engage citizens, we want to know about them, and we want to include them in our database. It doesn't matter whether they're, you know, grassroots organized, or whether they've come up out of a research project, or whether indeed like a central government authority has started the project. So if you think anything you're working on, like we may have missed it, or if you want to just make sure that it's included, by all means, give me an email and let me know of the name of it, and I can check whether it's in the database and get it added to it. There was 2 databases I mentioned, so that's the citizen science one. The other one, in terms of projects that are working on Mission Ocean related activities, will be like, that database is being compiled from past research projects. So it will be European funded research projects that information can be found with online. Again, if you're working on one of them and you think that it may not have been in one of the sources that I've mentioned, please reach out, and I can see, can we get it integrated? Will it work like that into our database? But yeah, I hope that answers your questions. It's kind of 2 different types. Yeah.
By the way, would you include also specific solutions for the? I'm thinking about nature-based solutions to protect and restore the. Oh,
absolutely.
Would you also consider this?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Excuse me, just to complete on this one, André, in terms of solution, a major part of the work which is being done on the backstage, let's say, of the project is what we call the knowledge and solution transfer. So a partner of us is actually looking on the most suited solution for the most for the challenge, the three different challenges, objectives of the mission. So within the database of the projects that we are collecting, we also scan for knowledge outputs that they can be used and uptaking and scaled up. So looking at TRL level that they are kind of ready to go 6, 7, 8, and then that they can be pushed forwards and really bring the solution to a challenge.
Yeah, oh, that's perfect. Yes. Can go back to the question of Jose that he put. I think it was Jose.
Oh, yes. Okay. So sorry. Now I guess I can join you. Sorry about that. The question, David, is the following. We've been talking a lot about the citizens' assemblies, and there is still some uncertainties related to what is really a citizen assembly, and also how does it is different or similar to the citizen engagement activities. Well, rephrasing, like, what makes a citizen assembly different from any other citizen engagement activity, and how do we are planning to do that European-wide?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting one, and it's something we've been working on lately with a lot of other projects. So I suppose there's a specific challenge thrown up by Mission Ocean in this regard, in that citizens' assemblies, if you look at any best practice documents online or how-tos or videos or talk to experts on citizen assemblies, there is a very specific kind of methodology and definition coming, and it involves this kind of, it's a long, it's expensive process, and it involves this kind of representative sampling. So for instance, you don't invite, any and everyone who wants to show up. It has to say, if you're doing a citizens assembly in France, you end up with this mini public that represents the kind of demographics of French society. The difficulty with that is that running good citizens assemblies under this framework costs a lot of money, and as in hundreds of thousands, and takes many years. So if citizens assemblies are going to be done through European projects for Mission Ocean, there's a difficulty there in terms of timing and in terms of budget. The other thing I think that's interesting is that that kind of citizen assembly process has been designed to work very well within a region or within a state. So, like, for instance, in terms of social inclusion, it's very important that kind of process is run in a local language. I think one of the really interesting challenges the mission throws up is, how do you run something like that at the level of a sea basin where there's multiple languages by definition? One of the kind of most interesting things about being in the European Union is that you're a union of people with completely different languages and cultures. So I think there's ways of being creative about instituting processes like that. So for instance, there's already some very interesting ocean and water related citizen assembly processes, deliberative publics like that going on in countries like Denmark, and Ireland will be setting up one over the period of 2025 to 2030. And I think it would be useful if Mission Ocean projects who have to work with citizen assemblies or set up citizen assemblies, first of all, they research what's going on in the states that they're working in, and see is there processes all that are already going to be going on that they should really link up with or provide, recommendations to, and not compete with or work alongside. And I think another thing is that maybe, to get a kind of an international element, there's already, engaged, like you say, Jose, there's already citizen engagement activities around Mission Ocean going on within projects, within innovation actions, and in other states. Perhaps it's the role of Mission Ocean projects to kind of provide the international element of that. So say, you have your national process or something like that, and then a Mission Ocean project could coordinate bringing different representatives of those processes together at kind of, at an international level, and discussing discussing the outcomes of the national process and integrating it into kind of a basin level set of recommendations or solutions. So yeah, look, honestly, these are all thoughts at the moment, and I think finding the kind of the right methods or the right structure that will both suit the mission, the kind of specifics of the mission, and also do justice to kind of assembly processes will be something that we'll be working on over the next couple of years. But I hope that's in some way insightful. I think, yeah, let's work on this together and find some ways of making it interesting.
Okay, thank you. I have here a question from Adamu Salizu. So are there any plans to bring the policymakers as well as the major stakeholders like companies producing plastic and coastal area communities? Also, let's try and bring the local coastal communities. I do not mean engaging them verbally, but mobilizing them with money to take charge and see it as their mandate. I think this is actually a quite interesting perspective, because you motivate them if you can kind of mobilize some funding for these more local
So I mean, I suppose I completely agree with all of that. So first of all, yeah, there are plenty of Mission Ocean projects, and baked into the mission itself is kind of the requirement to mix policymakers in with. I mean, when I say stakeholders, I kind of mean that in the widest sense, including policymakers, citizens, research and innovation, industry, everything like that. And yes, I suppose every Mission Ocean initiative and project is not just kind of the way it's set up is, it's not researchers working in research institutions coming up with kind of new ideas or anything like that, knowledge. Every project, as far as I'm aware, has on the ground elements, has engagement activities, has to set up whole initiatives or have yearly activities. Some are based some are European wide, like PREP4BLUE. Others are based very specifically in kind of specific regions and do exactly that, are kind of creating networks around restoration activities, for instance, with BlueMissionAA across the Arctic and Atlantic coast. And yeah, I mean, that kind of goes back to what I was saying a minute ago. Over the course of the mission, I think having on the ground activities repeated that allows people to get involved with the mission and kind of engage, not give them solutions or tell them how best to do their job, but do what they're doing and help them if they're doing something very useful in, for instance, southern Portugal, helping them upscale that and do that in 4 states, things like that. So no, I absolutely agree with that, and I think that is exactly what Mission Ocean projects, the space that Mission Ocean projects will be working in.
I just wanted to add something here, David, and especially related to the question from Adamu. So PREP4BLUE is kind of the overarching project, as we said. So we are a bit less closer to the specific communities than the Lighthouse CSAs and then the innovation actions would be. However, what we are looking into, and if we are having plans, yes, we do have some plans. We're looking into the regulatory environment, but also the economic environment of facilitating businesses or startups and help them find the right funding source for them from what is already out there in European Union. So in one sense, we are trying to develop this, what we call the heat map, the policy heat map, where there are regulations that really facilitate the mission and some regulations that they are lacking and would be appropriate to adopt in order to facilitate the implementation and then reaching these objectives. And at the same time, we are mapping the funding sources that can enable enterprises to thrive, to change and to adopt sustainable solutions, environmentally sustainable solutions, and in achieving these targets of the mission. So we are there to provide the guidelines, and then we are there to identify also different business models that they are novel and they are more likely to succeed into that. Some of these guidelines, they are already produced, not necessarily public yet, they are soon to be. And then the closer content to the ground communities, apart from well, what David and his team is leading on citizen engagement and stakeholder engagement, we expect it to come with the CSAs in a local level. Yeah, that's what I wanted just to add there.
Yeah, thank you, Irina. We have here one last question from the comments. It's what strategy innovation of the world durability and the science ocean and of the UN decade in the biodiversity? I think this is more a general question on what you think it's the strategy to tackle or the future strategies to tackle all these. And as you mentioned, I think it's the EU mission really thinks about this in a very strategic way. But I don't know if you have any comment on this question.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just reading it. I'm not sure do I fully understand the question, but yes, like you say, I think in terms of innovation strategy, that is exactly what kind of missions we're taught up about doing. It's the strategy is to challenge the model of developing kind of policy around supporting innovation within sectors. So say, you have an engineering strategy, an IT strategy, and they all they're siloed in one place. Instead, you develop strategy or challenge-based innovation strategy. So for instance, we don't need supercomputers and better recycling facilities. We need to clean our oceans and waters, and the technology will follow. So you don't, it's that kind of challenge-based or problem-based approach to innovation. And so, the idea being that to restore oceans and waters, you don't just need ecological solutions, but you also need tires made from different material, and you need you need household products that don't pollute as much, and you need upgraded to wastewater facilities, but you also need different forms of fertilizer spread on land that leads into the water. And so it's kind of thinking about basing it on the challenge, and the kind of technology follows, rather than kind of chasing technologies without there being kind of a sense of the overall purpose of the the kind of overall mission at the end of it. So I think that's the central strategy behind the missions.
And a
Yes.
very small comment. If I understand the question or the statement from the audience, I would say that the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, and also the United Nations Ocean Decade, is an international strategy putting forward our priorities at the moment as world priorities into sustainability. And then we have the sustainability goals like number 14 for the oceans. Then EU is actually aligning to the international let's say challenges and then the goals by the EU mission Ocean and Waters, and they also the European Commission strategy is putting aside the budget in order to succeed these goals. Of course, the United Nations decade is more of, let's say, a movement, while the European Commission is concretely taking actions and allowing the research community to achieve these targets. That's like a small comment of everybody being aligned into the same target, I would say.
Thank you, Erin. Jose, would you like to say something?
Oh yes, thank you. I mean, David and Erin have been, let's say, very informative and persuasive in terms of the mission Ocean. But again, I'm going to ask you if you could, before, we are very close to the end of this session. I'd like you to repeat again why and how citizens and organizations should and could connect with the mission. This is very important, this final message for the audience and for people watching on YouTube.
Okay, cool. So, I suppose why they should connect with the mission. I think the main point here is that many people around Europe are already connected with the mission. People live their lives either eating food that comes from the ocean or waters, living by lakes, you know, like drinking water, being parts of fishing community, working like we do in research, developing products either from sources from the sea or otherwise to work on the sea in some way. And so it's, you know, this is such a central part of our lives, and you know, there is this kind of, I think, this feeling around Europe and the world that over the past couple of years that, you know, governance is too far and like policy making is too far removed from kind of everyday life, and people aren't involved enough in creating the decisions that affect them. So Mission Ocean is exactly an effort at remedying that, at involving people in the decisions that you know, around their use of water and around protecting it as a resource. And so it's an honest effort in developing different ways of doing business with citizens and stakeholders, so that they have an active say in these kind of decisions that affect their everyday life and affect their everyday practice. So I think that's why they should get involved. There's kind of never been such a kind of an innovative, interesting attempt at doing things differently like that. How they can get involved. So I think absolutely, like I was saying, there's already so much good work going on around the continent. One of them would be by making that visible, by signing initiatives up to the charter, in which makes it more and more visible to the Mission Ocean community itself, and so that then that community, different aspects of it, can get in touch and network together and help people upscale fantastic initiatives, or put them in touch with people who are doing it in a different way, who can learn from each other, and generally work towards helping protect and restore oceans and waters. So, I mean, I hope that's helpful, Jose. I think it's just a fantastic, you know, this decade and the kind of the visibility of oceans and waters and the political power behind it. It's a fantastic opportunity for people to be involved with the decisions that, you know, are going to change society for the better and hopefully make you know, oceans a more beautiful and more livable place than they are right now. Yeah, now is the time to get involved.
Yeah, thank you so much, David. It was very clear. Thank you so much.
Thank you, David. I'm just going to go to this last question from Claire Beckham. Can grants and help be applied for even if the project is located in a place other than EU, even if the people working there are European citizens?
So I would say that's a hard question to just answer yes or no to, depending on the project and depending on the grant being applied for. There are other countries that like EU fundings can support, that apart from member states, associated countries and third countries, and there's a list. I don't know specific countries, but what I would say is that if you have an idea, the more important thing would be to check out, to kind of identify the funding sources that you might go for and check their eligibility criteria for your country is probably the best thing to do.
Okay, thank you, David. So thank you everyone for your presence, and also especially you, Erin and David. It was a very useful presentation. I think especially for the CSAs of the Mission Ocean, they will find very useful your tools and presentation. So thank you again, and I'm going to close the session. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
No problem. Thanks for the opportunity. Talk to you soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye there.